Let us have the pleasure of listening to our Honorable Dr. Sujeet Mishra, Senior Professor, Indian Railway Institute of Transport Management, Lucknow, for a keynote speech. Dr. Sujeet Mishra, sir, is currently serving as a Senior Professor, Capacity Building at the Indian Railway Institute of Transport Management, has distinguished himself in the field of electrical engineering as a seasoned designer, innovator, and a leader, with a profound impact on locomotives design, traction power design, standards and regulation formulation, and knowledge management. Dr. Mishra has been driving focus is in various key initiatives within the Indian Railways. His instrumental role in the transport of technology from three-phase electric locomotives, serial production, and the establishment of an indigenous vendor base underscore his commitment to enforcing innovation and self-reliance in the railway sector. Dr. Sujeet Mishra, sir.
Namaskar and good morning. It's always a pleasure to be in company of experts and insiders of our domain. On the theme of conference, I believe that, and that's how I always looked at the things, that before we formulate policies, we interpret policies. If we actually decipher or try to understand the key drivers, which actually is moving the things, which is granting the momentum and direction, that's something which is extremely important, because the missions like Gati Shakti, the projects like what we are currently engaged in, can only possibly be interpreted when we look at these drivers, like what the previous speaker, Dr. Chaudhary, mentioned, that spending 14% of our GDP on just moving things, when we could have done that at 10% points lesser, creates immense value for the country, because that frees up capital to be invested in more gainful projects and more gainful schemes. In last 9 years, or rather in last 10 years, we have seen an unprecedented push in rail infrastructure. And it has happened in rolling stock, it has happened in the wayside infrastructure, it has happened in the permanent way. In fact, not just that, all components of Gati Shakti, including ports, roads, air, have seen major infra spend. And this actually has ushered in what we call as a true siloless, something what the government is currently pushing for, that siloless working and siloless movement of people, material and services within the country. GST was one of them. Gati Shakti takes it further by several notches up. So it is truly in spirit of what we call as economy first or the customer first approach. So it's not that road has moved from point A to B. The other mode, maybe that could have been ship, that could have been rail. They were waiting for the paperwork to be completed before the things could have been transshipped. So a very strong technical base first was created before this project was launched. And I cannot think of any other project in human history, for that matter, not just that. One can only think of projects like Project Manhattan, which were massive in scale, wherein a lot of things had to be created, had to be invented, had to be understood just to implement something. So Mission Gati Shakti is something of that scale, and it's truly disruptive in our country. I'm extremely glad to know, sir, before Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya became Central University, it was National Rail Transportation Institute, and I had the privilege to be its OSD. So it's really heartening to know, sir, that we had our first convocation recently. This institute got mandated to create human resource, because the entire Gati Shakti mission and the massive infra spend is predicated on availability of trained manpower which can leverage this infra spend. And the idea there was to create sustainable opportunities of employment, not just that people get employed in project phase of this spend, but also they get gainful employment over the decades to come. And Gati Shakti, I believe, sir, this year in few months we would be having our first graduates who would be coming out, and it took a lot of efforts to sculpt their curriculum. There were a lot of questions which had to be answered, and it's really heartening to know that we have added to the bouquet of courses which we are offering. I would request the industry present there to look at the graduates, our undergrads, and several of our postgrads are already in the market. They were trained and they were given special internships in leading logistics company in India, globally as well. And as our engineers come out in a few months' time, they would really be prime catch for the industry, and I would sincerely request industry to look at them. And I will also request Gati Shakti Vishwavidyalaya to reach out through their training and placement office. So, if we look at Gati Shakti, we talk a lot about something which has been the visible part of it, the infra spend, because the project phase of any endeavor is the most attractive and the most glamorous phase. We create something which never existed. I'd like to confine myself to the other part, which is the less glamorous part of the thing. Okay, we have created something, then what? Here I would like to come to not so glamorous part of training and skilling. And in government academic institutions, this sounded to be a cliche. And in fact, when we created NRTI, which later became GSV, and before that we made Indian Maritime University as a central university, this question used to repeatedly come: what about, okay, you are just any other university, how you're going to distinguish yourself? Here the Prime Minister gave a very interesting thought, and we used to debate a lot on this, that most of our training, and especially executive training, was based on what we used to call as rule-based training. So we used to give a rule book, and that's how actually most of the training programs all over the world work. You want a training in GST, you're given a rule book, and you go through clause by clause what it means, what it interprets. But as government servants, government employees, and also the people who are providing interface to the government services, the PM said that you now need to shift from rule to role-based training. So it's not just that I can throw a rule book over you. I must be in a position to offer you a solution. So the entire shift, whether we look at GSV, whether we look at Indian Maritime University, or we look at the central training institutions which are there in the country, which are mandated to create human resource to serve the citizenry, this has to now not just throw the rule book at the citizen, but must offer a solution to the citizen. So major shift which has now happened, which I believe adds glamour to the otherwise a cliched part of training, upskilling, retraining, relearning part of the thing. In this, I'd like to further go to a very important point which happened, which was when we moved from rule-based to role-based training, there was a need which was felt that how do you measure the maturity of training institutions? So we have very jazzy buildings which have come about, and at some point of time we started thinking that creating a beautiful building, having well manicured lawns is what a university or what a training institution should look like. So national standards for civil services training institutes, it's a 59-point metric which was created, and a process of accreditation was started to measure maturity of every civil services training institute, which spans right from Mussoorie through Hyderabad, NP Hyderabad, Customs, Excise, whatnot, and various railway academies. Each now has to be measured on its maturity, not just on the beauty of the building, but also on the presence of institutional mechanisms to deliver high quality content consistently, and also get into continual quality improvement. And here I'd like to, with certain sense of pride, say that there are only 2 academies in the country which have been rated 4-star, the 5-star being the highest, and by design it's an aspirational level. There are only 2 academies in the country which are 4-star, and we happen to be one of them. That's Indian Railways Institute of Transport Management, and we are located in Lucknow. Now coming to the next part, lot of infra, say for example, private sidings are getting created outside the standard government-owned network, and this network has to work with our network. So many of our non-railway entities had an issue in owning and operating these assets. The various training academies of railways then got mandated to train non-railway executives as well to handle these assets. So typically organizations like steel plants, large thermal plants, who use the ports, who have to offer connectivity to the nearest railheads. We are, across the various academies in Pune, Nasik, Lucknow, they are offering programs, specialized tailored programs to these. So the industry can look at them as you create more hands-on resources which can integrate your networks with the government-owned railway networks, which actually also lays down the regulations of for the safety and operations. There's another challenge which brings us to closer to the theme of the conference, that what are the opportunities which are coming about. If you look at the massive spend which has happened and the massive infrastructure which got created, and I'll just take example of one, you'll find that we really are little challenged to maintain and own these assets. To illustrate, before we got independence, rather when we got independence in 1947, we had only 388 route kilometers of electrified network. And from 1947 till 2014, we created about 21,000 route kilometers of electrification. And from in just last 10 years, this being the 10th year of this statistic, we have added 37,000 route kilometers. So what we did between 47 and 2014, that was about 21,000 route kilometers. And in just last 10 years, we have electrified close to 37,000, little over 37,000 route kilometer. So you can understand that the existing maintenance facilities, and we traditionally maintained our own assets. That was the philosophy with which we operated and maintained our assets. So you can appreciate that our facilities actually are getting stretched, getting little challenged. They're being pushed to the seams. So government also created enabling policy provisions which permitted, hiring third-party maintainers and to bring them into the system. So that's one big opportunity which has come about, which also needs trained, skilled manpower to handle that. And in fact, one of the thoughts which used to come to our mind was the people who created these assets after 31st December, when we electrify the complete network, would now be available in the market, which can then possibly use them for maintaining these assets. But if we go towards the third-party maintenance, it opens a few challenges. A part of our network, so for example, if you take the oldest operating steam locomotive, you can still steam a locomotive after 150 or 160 years, but you can't maintain or repair a 10-year-old television. So that's a paradigm, and in fact, you'll find that many parts of the railway network offer these kind of varied challenges. So a part of our segment can be readily made amenable to third-party maintenance, which can be possibly our track or wagons, which don't have many active components, which, like the previous speaker, Dr. Chaudhary, talked about the control communication equipment, and I'll also like to add power electronic equipment in that. So these elements actually are more readily amenable for third-party maintenance without tweaking many of our existing contracts. But if we look at the other part, which typically would cover locomotives or train sets or the EMUs, which have many power electronic and several advanced control and communication equipment, the existing contracts need to be tweaked, and also the way we look at maintenance philosophy, the essential maintenance philosophy of Indian Railways also now need to be tweaked on that. And we can possibly take cue from what we call as right to repair, which is a Ministry of Commerce initiative to foster a circular economy. There, a customer has right to approach a third-party maintainer who is certified, qualified, and without voiding his warranty, he can get the maintenance done or repair done, possibly at a lower cost. There were several, I believe, like New Jersey Transit, they also created certain mechanisms wherein you're not bound to the OEM, because till now in rolling stock we have OEM only approach, that you give maintenance contracts only to the OEM, and the fundamental premise being that they are the people who are in possession of their IPs. Now, a graded approach can be taken wherein the repair information can be possibly passed on, the way right to repair legislations have been, I believe they have been enacted by European Union. In US also there is a move to get that. India shortly will have that. So with this kind of framework and understanding and priming of industry being done, we can possibly have a similar thing wherein the asset ownership can be more confidently done. And to illustrate, without naming the company, in 1988 we signed a contract to get a locomotive from a certain company in Sweden. And when in 1993 we went for a bigger contract, it became a Swiss company. By the time first locomotive came, it was purchased by a German company. And by the time we started to make it in India, it had become a Canadian company headquartered in Germany. And by the time this locomotive finished and completed about 25 years of service, this has become a French company. For asset which has a life of close to 35 years, this kind of incarnation, repeated change of ownerships create a lot of anxiety in minds of people who are taking these mega purchase decisions today. And possibly they cannot be met unless we permit a shift from OEM only approach to the third party maintenance. So that brings a big opportunity to the industry. And if we look at on the back of this infra spend, this opportunity is getting created. There was earlier a question of fleet heterogeneity, which was impacting, there were people not very keen to come because the fleet was heterogeneous enough. There was no critical mass for a particular design for third-party maintenance to come and invest in. However, with long-term purchase contracts, wherein the manufacturer gets order of typically say 1,000 locomotives, we believe that sufficient critical mass is now getting created, which can interest third-party maintainers to consider looking at this element. Lastly, there is a big geographical spread of our assets. So it's not just that the predictive maintenance, we've been talking about predictive maintenance for too long. There is a thing when you run an operation, you need something what we understand as a timely maintenance. You are on the run and you find that something has gone amiss on the rolling stock and needs to be maintained. Now, in the current way in which we run the network, it becomes extremely difficult. So unless it passes through, and you would have noticed that in night, if you chance to see outside of your coach, you will find that there are many people on their hunchback. They're sitting with their torches or with a tube light. They're looking at the undergear of the locomotives or of the coaches or the wagons which are passing by. Now that can only happen when you have traversed few hundred kilometers. And if the rolling stock is coming with certain deficiency, you don't possibly get a chance, or you don't have that kind of granular vision which a human being possibly can have to know that something has went out of geometry. He can only look at the gross things, that something is smoking, he can smell something. But if something is out of shape, is something which he cannot see in the current system. So the timely maintenance, it's not predictive maintenance, it's not even preventive maintenance. So as we push more trains, as we are getting less time to maintain, the timely maintenance by induction of technology becomes something which is very important, which again, I believe is a big opportunity. Our metros, which are much geographically small, I believe I heard of one such project which was being pushed by MMRDA. So such things surely will come. That brings a lot of opportunities to our training academic institutions. And lastly, we are investing big in infrastructure. So there is a need to take technological leadership in this segment, because then only we can derive the true value over the life of the asset. And that's where we created an RTI for that. Gati Shakti is there, and the way Gati Shakti is moving ahead with the other MOUs which they are trying to partner with leaders in the technology, I believe they would be able to spearhead along with the CTIs, taking leadership in those technological fields. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I feel delightful to call upon Srimati Mamta Shah ma'am, MD and CEO of Urban Infra Group, to please kindly present the memento to our honorable guest on the dais.